At my daughter's graduation, my husband stood up and said, "I'm starting a new life, without you." His girlfriend was at our table. The room fell silent. I smiled and said, "Thank you for being honest." Then, I placed an envelope beside his plate. He opened it and lost control. "My name is Eleanor Blake. I'm 55. And I was married to Raymond for 28 years. We were supposed to be celebrating our daughter Sophie's college graduation. The restaurant on King Street was filled with family, old friends, and colleagues who had watched our lives unfold like a photo album across decades. This dinner was meant to honor Sophie's hard work, her future. But Raymond turned it into a stage for his exit. He made his announcement as if he were pitching a new business venture. Calm, detached. As if I were just a minor character he was recasting out of convenience. All while Vanessa, 17 years younger, dressed in pearl earrings I'd seen in our bedroom drawer 6 months ago, sat pretending to be invisible. She wasn't. I saw her. I saw all of them, even the ones who looked away instead of looking at me. What they expected was a scene. A gasp. Tears. An outburst. Instead, I stayed exactly who I've always been, composed. But this time, I wasn't silent because I was scared. I was silent because I was ready. I reached into my handbag and pulled out the cream envelope. I placed it beside Raymond's plate without a word. The edge of it rested near his silverware, like a final course he hadn't ordered. He glanced down, puzzled. "What's this?" "Something for later," I said, voice steady. I turned to Sophie, whose face had gone completely still, as if frozen in the moment between childhood and adulthood. I kissed her on the cheek and whispered, "This is still your day." Then I stood, adjusted my navy dress, looked around the table, and said simply, "Please enjoy the meal. The food is wonderful." And then I walked out. Out of the restaurant. Out of the lie. Out of the version of my life I had been shrinking inside for far too long. Outside, the Charleston summer heat pressed against me like a second skin. And yet, I could finally breathe. Behind me, I heard the door swing open. Then Raymond's voice, shaky, unraveling. "Eleanor. What the hell is this?" I didn't stop. Because that envelope? It was the beginning of everything. People always assume betrayal begins with a single moment. A kiss. A lie. A message left open on the wrong phone. But with Raymond, it started in whispers, so quiet, so ordinary, I almost missed them. Like the year he found himself through gourmet coffee and opened a failing roastery using our joint savings. Or when he decided he needed space and took a 3-week creative sabbatical in Santa Fe, alone. I was the one who stayed. I stayed up at night when Sophie had the flu. I managed our bills, filed our taxes, took care of the car, the dog, the leaky roof. I missed job promotions because we couldn't both be busy, and his dream needed more time. There was always something to wait for. After the next launch. After Sophie finishes middle school. After he gets through this season. So I waited. And I quieted myself. Even when he forgot our anniversary 2 years in a row. Even when I overheard him refer to my work as a little finance job during a dinner party in front of colleagues who once respected me. I smiled through it all, clinking glasses, playing the part. That's what good wives did, right? I was raised in a family that equated endurance with love. My mother once told me that a successful marriage was just surviving the hard years. She didn't mention that sometimes, the hard years are all of them. Raymond wasn't always this man. Or maybe more truthfully, I didn't want to see him clearly. There was a time he used to bring me coffee in bed on Sundays. He once built me a bookshelf from reclaimed wood for our 10th anniversary. I remember how he held me when we lost our first pregnancy, how we grieved in silence and rebuilt ourselves around Sophie. But the cracks were always there. They widened slowly, like ice breaking across a frozen lake. 3 months ago, I noticed them in our bank statements. Small transfers, odd timing. A recurring amount, $246.80, disappearing every Friday morning into an unfamiliar account. It was the kind of thing most people wouldn't notice. But I did. I've worked in finance for over 2 decades. I once built reporting systems that spotted fraud in multinational corporations. This was sloppy. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe an auto payment we forgot to cancel. Then I saw the Uber receipts. Jewelry charges. A booking for a beachfront hotel in Hilton Head, dated the same weekend. Raymond claimed he had a conference in Atlanta. I said nothing. Not yet. Instead, I began collecting. I printed statements, took screenshots, checked the metadata on his photos when he posted from work events. And the messages, oh, the messages. One night, he left his phone unlocked beside the sink. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Vanessa, she suspects anything? Raymond, not a clue. Eleanor still thinks I'm broke. That's her weakness, she trusts too easily. I remember standing in that bathroom, the world suddenly off balance. My hands were shaking, but not from heartbreak. From something colder, sharper, clarity. Raymond wasn't just unfaithful. He was planning an exit. A dramatic one. With flair. Likely one that made him look like the victim, the man who tried everything, but whose cold wife just didn't understand him anymore. He had rehearsed it. He had written it out in texts. He chose Sophie's graduation dinner as his grand stage. Why? Because I wouldn't dare react. Not in public. Not in front of our daughter. He counted on that. And maybe, once, he would have been right. But not this time, because while Raymond was plotting escape, I was documenting everything. I contacted Robert Hale, a quiet but razor-sharp attorney I trusted from my professional circle. We reviewed the prenup, yes, the very one Raymond insisted on 28 years ago when I had a family inheritance and he had nothing but ambition. He thought it had expired. It hadn't. There was a fidelity clause still binding. And I had the evidence. Robert smiled when I handed him the last batch of messages. He thinks he's playing poker, he said. You're playing chess. I remember sitting in that downtown legal office, air conditioning humming softly, sunlight pouring in from the harbor windows. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel small. I felt precise. Raymond had no idea what was coming. He thought he was the storm, but I was already rebuilding, quietly, carefully. I'd found an office to lease downtown. I registered Blake Financial Transitions, a consultancy for women navigating divorce and financial upheaval. I wasn't running from the pain anymore. I was shaping it into something useful. Sophie still didn't know. I didn't want her last semester tainted by secrets and shadows. She had worked too hard to stand on that stage. I owed her that clean moment, that brief feeling of triumph before everything shifted. So I waited. And I watched. And I chose the exact moment when my silence would make the loudest sound. At that dinner table, with 50 people watching, I smiled. Because when Raymond raised his glass to burn it all down, I had already built the fireproof exit. The house looked the same. White shutters, trimmed hedges, the flagstone path Sophie used to race down with scraped knees and a popsicle in hand. But the sameness was a lie. The warmth that once lived behind those walls had long since faded. I parked in the driveway, stepped out, and stood for a moment before going in. The silence was heavy. There were no party guests, no polite laughter, no carefully chosen centerpieces. Just me, and the weight of nearly 30 years folding in on themselves. Inside, everything was in its place. The antique grandfather clock from my father ticked with mechanical precision. The couch where Raymond and I once fell asleep watching late-night documentaries still faced the same fireplace. But the air felt colder. Sharper. I went upstairs. In the master closet, just as I suspected, his suitcases were packed. Tucked in the back corner. Folded neatly. Shoes wrapped in dry cleaning bags. Shirts layered by color. Raymond always was meticulous with appearances. Pity he hadn't been as careful with his soul. I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed we once shared, ran my hand along the comforter, and allowed myself one moment, just one, to grieve the man I thought he was. Then my phone buzzed. Vivian, Raymond's sister, had flown in for Sophie's graduation. Her text was short. I'm so sorry. Just heard what he did. If you need anything, I'm at my place. I replied with a single line. Thank you. I'm all right. Just keeping things steady for Sophie. Raymond's phone calls came next. Then texts. Then voicemails. I didn't answer. But I did respond to one message from Sophie. I'm okay. This isn't your burden. Enjoy your night. We'll talk later. I love you. She deserved that grace. 2 hours later, the front door slammed. His footsteps echoed through the foyer. Eleanor. His voice cracked, angry and panicked. What the hell did you put in that envelope? I was sitting in the living room, laptop closed, paperwork beside me. Calm. You served me divorce papers, he spat, stepping into the room. Today? At our daughter's graduation dinner. I thought it aligned nicely with your plans, I said evenly. You wanted a fresh start. I'm just helping facilitate the transition. You had no right. I had every right, I cut in, voice still steady, just like you had the right to choose Vanessa. We all make choices, Raymond. He scoffed. The prenup doesn't even matter. It expired years ago. I looked up at him, directly. No, it didn't. Section 12, remember? The fidelity clause remains valid for the duration of the marriage. Your lawyer should have explained that to you, assuming you actually consulted one. The blood drained from his face. You're bluffing, he whispered. I opened my folder and handed him a printed copy, the same one I filed with the court. This is real. And binding. He sank into the chair across from me, staring at the papers as if they were written in a language he couldn't understand. His world, carefully constructed on ego and assumption, was beginning to crack. He tried again, softer this time. Eleanor, what about everything we've built? All these years. All those years meant something to me, I said. That's why your betrayal cut so deep. He saw an opening. Then maybe we can fix it. Please. I was confused. This wasn't confusion. It was a plan. You moved our money. You lied. You staged a public humiliation. You thought I'd fall apart quietly. He looked away. I reached for my phone. Do you want to hear what you said? He jerked his head back. What? I pressed play. After the graduation, I'll tell her it's over. Public setting is safer. She won't make a scene. Then Vanessa's voice, and she has no idea about the money? Your voice again. None. Eleanor trusts me completely. That's her weakness. He blanched. You recorded me? In Georgia, one-party consent is legal. And this is my house. I didn't record anything private. Just conversations about how you intended to defraud me. Raymond stood up, pacing now. I need to make some calls. I smiled faintly. Your lawyer should be first. I'll be staying at Vivian's tonight. Vivian? He repeated. She's not very pleased with you, I added. She saw you and Vanessa together last Christmas. She gave you a chance to come clean. You didn't. So she came to me. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe he didn't. And maybe, for the first time in years, I didn't recognize myself either. Because the woman who once would have begged, compromised, cried. She was gone. That night at Vivian's felt like stepping into another life. Her bungalow was quiet, filled with the scent of chamomile and the soft rustle of wind through tall backyard trees. She didn't press me with questions. Just poured 2 glasses of wine, handed me one and sat beside me in silence. I never thought he'd humiliate you like that, she finally said. He didn't, I replied. He humiliated himself. But when I lay on the guest bed hours later, staring at the ceiling fan spinning endlessly above me, the bravado faded. I clutched the extra pillow to my chest like armor and my mind ran in circles. Was I doing the right thing? Would Sophie understand? What if I had waited too long? For 20 years, my instinct had always been to hold things together. Tape up the cracks. Hide the mess. I was the woman who baked apology pies after arguments, who ironed Raymond's shirts even after we fought, who never let Sophie see me cry. Now I was the woman tearing it all apart. And it terrified me. The next morning, my body moved on autopilot, shower, coffee, checking email, but inside, everything felt fragile. Vivian left for work early, a quiet nod between us as she passed my chair at the kitchen island. I appreciated her absence. I needed to breathe without explaining myself. By mid-morning, the panic returned. Not loud, but steady, like a low tide rising. What if I was wrong about the prenup? What if I had misread a clause? What if Raymond found a legal loophole and spun the story in court? I pulled out the file again. Reread every line. Section 12. The fidelity clause remains active throughout the duration of the legal marriage. Section 18. Duration shall include any period of dissolution proceedings. I wasn't wrong. Still, doubt clung to me. I drove to my new office space that afternoon, not to work, but just to stand inside it. A small townhouse, cream-colored with pale green shutters, nestled between a bakery and a bookstore. It wasn't much yet. A desk, 2 chairs, unopened boxes. But it was mine. I ran my fingers along the windowsill, exhaled, and whispered to no one. You are not what he made you believe. That became my mantra. You are not what he made you believe. He made me feel small, disposable, replaceable. But I had been the one who paid Sophie's tuition while he invested in pipe dreams. I had negotiated our mortgage, managed our retirement funds, built safety into a life Raymond constantly gambled with. Still, the scars ran deep. I remembered the night I got my first consulting offer years ago. An all-women finance firm in Atlanta wanted me to lead a division. I was so excited, I printed the email and surprised Raymond with it over dinner. His response? You'd be commuting every week. Who would take Sophie to piano? He didn't say, I'm proud of you. He said, that's not realistic right now. And I folded. Again. It wasn't just what he did with Vanessa. It was every little message over the years that told me I wasn't enough on my own. That night, I allowed myself to cry. Not for him. For the woman I had been. The woman who dimmed her light for a man who never once adjusted his eyes. The next morning, I turned that grief into fuel. I met with Robert again. We went over financial disclosures. Set court timelines. He was firm but calm. You've done everything right, he said. He's unraveling, not you. The hardest part was Sophie. She showed up at Vivian's 2 days later, still in her graduation dress, mascara smudged, shaking. She collapsed into my arms the way she used to after nightmares as a little girl. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. I didn't want to ruin your final semester, I said. You deserved that joy. She pulled back, red-eyed but steady. Well, Dad took care of ruining it. We sat for hours. I told her everything. The bank transfers. The affair. The plan. The prenup. The recordings. She listened without interrupting. And when I finished, she didn't ask why. She simply said, good. He doesn't get to hurt you and walk away. Still, I reminded her, he's your father. That relationship is yours to navigate. Not today, she said. Today I'm your daughter first. That night, the three of us, me, Sophie, and Vivian ate takeout on the floor. We opened a bottle of red wine that had been collecting dust in Vivian's cabinet. We laughed, we cursed, we cried. And in that fragile space, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was choosing. Each day that followed, I felt myself rebuilding. Bit by bit. I changed the locks on the house. I transferred our joint accounts under court supervision. I finalized my business license. I ordered new furniture for the office. Then came the hearing date. 3 weeks after the dinner. Rain fell steadily that morning as I walked into the courthouse beside Robert. My heels clicked against the marble floor like a quiet metronome. Raymond arrived 5 minutes late, haggard, eyes bloodshot, dressed like he had slept in his clothes. His lawyer looked half-prepared. The judge? Not amused. She reviewed the prenuptial agreement in full. Confirmed the clause. Upheld the freeze on assets. Assigned the house to me for the duration of proceedings. Reprimanded Raymond for financial misconduct. This is outrageous, he muttered. The judge didn't flinch. You signed this document, Mr. Blake. You will honor it. When we stepped outside, he tried to follow me. Eleanor, please. Don't do this. It doesn't have to end like this. I turned. It already did, Raymond. The night you decided I was expendable. He said nothing. I walked away. And for once, he didn't follow. News travels fast in a city like Charleston. Within days of the preliminary hearing, the whispers had begun. At brunch spots. At charity luncheons. At the tennis club Raymond frequented more for networking than sport. People were talking. And for once, I didn't feel the need to correct or control the narrative. I let silence do what it does best, reveal character. Raymond's carefully polished image as the charming entrepreneur, devoted husband, proud father, it began to erode. His story didn't add up. The timelines were suspicious. The sudden unraveling of his finances raised eyebrows. And the more he tried to explain, the more people began to suspect. I, meanwhile, said little. When asked, I simply offered a tight smile and said, some endings write themselves. Behind the scenes, however, I was busy. The townhouse I had leased for Blake Financial Transitions was beginning to take shape. I painted the walls a warm sand color, added soft lighting, plants by the window, and a small coffee station in the corner. Clients began to trickle in, mostly women referred by friends, lawyers, or therapists. Divorcees. Widows. Women starting over. They came in carrying fear and shame in their purses. They left with spreadsheets, strategy, and something sturdier beneath their skin. It was the most fulfilling work I had done in decades. Sophie called almost every night. Her job in Charleston's downtown marketing firm was taking off, and she'd started seeing someone new, slowly, carefully. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she told me once, after I finished describing my latest client breakthrough. "You're helping people climb out of what you survived." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me," I replied, turning damage into design. Then came the twist I hadn't even planned. Vanessa left him. 2 weeks after the hearing, Vivian called, barely hiding the smirk in her voice. "She's gone," she said. "Packed up." Told her friend she didn't sign up for a broke man with legal problems. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Later that day, I saw the moving truck outside Raymond's rented apartment. A cheap, cramped space compared to the house he had once bragged about designing with me. He stood outside, arms folded, eyes empty. I passed him in my car and didn't stop. I didn't even wave. That was the thing about poetic justice, it doesn't need witnesses. It just needs to land. Raymond had gambled on a new life built on lies and came up short. He lost the house, the savings, the woman, the version of himself he thought was untouchable. All that remained was a man left staring at the wreckage of his own making. As for me, I was still rebuilding. Not out of spite, but out of choice. I bought a new teak desk. I joined a local book club. I reconnected with a friend from college who now ran mindfulness retreats in Asheville. I signed up for one in October. The nights weren't always easy. Some evenings, I'd catch myself setting the dinner table for two. Other times, I'd smell his cologne in a passing crowd and my stomach would turn without warning. But healing was never meant to be tidy. It came in waves. Some loud, some gentle. And through it all, I kept moving forward. The final hearing was scheduled for mid-November, ironically, the week of what would have been our 29th anniversary. I wore navy blue that day. Not black. Not gray. Navy. Like the sea I had crossed to reach this version of myself. The judge upheld the prenup in full. Raymond left the courtroom with a box of documents, a defeated attorney, and a future that looked nothing like the fantasy he had written with Vanessa. I retained the house, 70% of our joint investments, my retirement accounts, and, more importantly, my dignity. As we exited, Raymond approached me. "I made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "You did." He nodded, eyes damp. "Is there any chance we could?" "No," I said gently, firmly. "That door closed the day you opened another behind mine." He didn't argue. For once, he simply accepted. 6 months later, I celebrated the official launch of Blake Financial Transitions with a small gathering in the office courtyard. Sophie came, of course. So did Vivian. So did my first 2 clients, now friends. We toasted not to revenge, but to renewal. "Do you ever miss him?" Sophie asked that evening as we stood by the harbor, watching the lights shimmer across the water. "I miss the version of him that never existed," I answered. "The man I thought he was. The life I thought we had." She nodded slowly. "You're happier now." I smiled. "I'm freer now." That night, I went home to my quiet, candlelit living room. I poured a glass of red wine, pulled out an old leather-bound notebook, and began sketching a new workshop series for women starting over at 50. At the top of the page, I wrote, "Start here with yourself." Because in the end, that envelope I placed beside Raymond's champagne glass wasn't just an ending. It was a key to a door I never knew I could open. And behind it, I didn't find revenge. I found me. My new morning started with silence. Not the cold, strained silence that once hung over breakfasts with Raymond, where coffee cups clinked louder than our conversations. No, this was a full silence. A chosen one. Peaceful. I brewed my coffee in the small kitchen of my now uncluttered home. Same house, different energy. No echoes of slammed doors, no passive-aggressive sighs from across the hall. Just sunlight through sheer curtains and the hum of possibility. Outside, the early Charleston fog lingered over the cobblestone streets. I took my cup to the porch and sat on the swing, wrapped in a shawl Sophie had given me last Christmas. She had picked it out before she knew the truth, before the unraveling. And yet, somehow, it had become a symbol of survival, of softness that outlasted storms. 6 months had passed since the final hearing. 3 months since I officially moved all of Raymond's things to a small storage unit on the edge of town. I kept only one photo of us tucked in a box labeled Past Life. It wasn't to mourn. It was to remember who I had been. Because I had loved once. Fully. Blindly. And even though that love had been betrayed, it wasn't something I wanted to erase. Only to outgrow. My consultancy had grown faster than I expected. Word spread. Women, some confident, some shattered, began to show up at my office needing more than spreadsheets. They needed space. Clarity. Voice. I gave them all 3. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just knew what it felt like to wake up one morning and no longer recognize your own life. One woman, a mother of 4, once sat across from me with tear-streaked cheeks and whispered, "I feel like I'm disappearing." I took her hands in mine and said, "Then let's help you reappear on your terms." And slowly, she did. So did I. I traveled to Asheville for that mindfulness retreat in October. Stood barefoot in a mountain stream, wrote letters I never intended to send, sat in stillness I didn't know how to tolerate 6 months ago. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't flinch. It's strange how grief can shape you, then release you, leaving behind someone you hadn't dared imagine. Raymond called once. Just once. It was a short voicemail. "I saw your website. You've built something incredible. I'm sorry, Eleanor. Truly. I hope you're happy." I never called back. Forgiveness, for me, wasn't about reconciliation. It was about reclaiming the space he once occupied, emotionally, mentally, even financially, and filling it with my own voice. And that voice had changed. I no longer softened statements to make others comfortable. I no longer shrank my plans to fit someone else's dreams. I didn't apologize for speaking with certainty. Vivian noticed. Sophie noticed. Even I noticed. One evening, Sophie and I sat at a quiet cafe overlooking the water. She had just landed a promotion, and I had just signed on my first institutional client, an organization supporting women re-entering the workforce. "I feel like we both became someone new this year," she said. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe we just became more of who we were always meant to be." She smiled, tilting her head. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" I thought about that question for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "Because even the worst parts taught me something. About boundaries. About value. About what I will and will not accept again." She nodded. "I think that's powerful." "It is," I said quietly. "And it's earned." That night, back at home, I lit a single candle and curled up on the couch with a book I hadn't made time to read in years. The story was about a woman who reinvented her life after loss. Fiction, but familiar. Halfway through the first chapter, I paused, closed the book, and stared into the quiet flicker of flame. I had started this journey thinking it would be about revenge. About winning. But somewhere along the way, I stopped needing to win. I just wanted peace. And I had found it in early morning fog, in the steady rhythm of my own breathing, in the way the house no longer felt like a battleground. I wasn't the same woman who walked out of that restaurant. I wasn't the woman who once believed silence was strength. Now I understood. Silence is only powerful when it's chosen, not when it's forced. And love? Real love, whether from a partner, a child, a friend, or from yourself, never asks you to disappear. It asks you to rise. So, if you're listening to this story now, wondering if you're being unreasonable, if you're being too much, if you should just keep enduring, let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and fully recognized yourself? Because that, more than any marriage, title, or financial account, is the beginning of everything. And it's never too late to begin again.